Hey guys, I'm Susanna. This is Jeremy. We just wanted to welcome you back to another episode of the Imperfect Show. And this is where Jeremy and I just talk about life things, family things, couple things. And this week we wanted to talk about the topic of love. And the reason that we want to talk about this is just because we've kind of been talking through some of the things that we're dealing with during this time that we're all kind of going through, and just the way that we are moving through it in a good way. And I feel like this issue of how we define love is something that can help us, but also if we are not defining love correctly, it can cause us to either feel unloved or not know how to express our love correctly. And really, we were talking about this in this time of year, but also this season that we're kind of all in right now. It's really important that we are defining this word love correctly, and how we are expressing it and how we are identifying the way that we're receiving it, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. In this particular moment in time, this video will be made public the week after Easter. So Easter Sunday is just a couple of days away as we're taping this. And really, when we consider Easter, there are a lot of things that we think about. But one of the things that we find in the Easter story, the crucifixion and the resurrection, is really the greatest illustration of what real love, true, genuine love actually is. And so, talking about the things that we're dealing with and really the family dynamics and trying to understand how to interact with one another, and then looking at the illustration of love that we have in this time of year is makes this a great time to talk about it. So love is one of those things that's extremely misunderstood. We can start there. Most people just misunderstand what it is. And it's really not anyone's fault that we misunderstand it. It's just culture. It's how we were raised. It's what we have seen in other people that we care about, and people that we trust. We learn what love is by observing most of the time instead of actually thinking. And when we consider love, the type of love that's illustrated for us in maybe movies or media, perhaps even in the relationships of the people that we know, what we see most of the time is not love as it is properly defined, but love that is very much self-focused. It's focused on me. And really, most of the time, it's focused on how I feel because of what someone else is doing, either because of what they're saying or how they're treating me. And a lot of things that we could talk about, along those lines. But love generally, as modeled as, kind of in popular culture and in the world around us, is something that is me focused instead of others focused. And I think we see this really well illustrated between husbands and wives, or in those close family relationships.
Mm-hmm. I think society too, like you were talking about, like that we see in movies and all of that, I feel like that really is very harmful to young people and kind of the next generation that's coming up. And it's very prevalent in the way that they are interacting with each other and relationships, and even interacting with their parents and adults and all of that. And so I feel like it's really starting to become, I think, more, I guess prevalent is the word, that people are not really being raised to define love correctly.
Right. And so when you define love in terms of how something or someone makes me feel, really what you do is you end up pursuing love. You're pursuing the feeling that it can be things. We say, I love those things. Why do we love those things? Because of how they make us feel. I love that food because of how it makes us feel. I love that person because of how I feel when I'm around them.
And it's really just a really selfish thing, because it's all about you and how you're feeling and how that is to you.
Right. And it's also very empty on the other side, because feelings change. They come and they go. They're up and they're down. Often early in a relationship, there's a lot more of the feeling of love than later on in a relationship when things are going really well. You feel in love. When things are not going as well, you feel less in love. And right now, a lot of people are dealing with stressors they've never dealt with in their relationships and in their families, and they're having thoughts they've never had before and feelings they've never had before. Insecurity tends to remove the feeling of love. Love the feeling that goes along with that is a very secure feeling. We feel secure, and so we feel loved. And when that security is taken away, the feelings of love go with it. So if we're not careful, if we define love from an emotional position and how it makes me feel, then it's something we'll always be chasing because we will not always feel in love. And yet, unfortunately, that's where most people live. That's where the phrase, we have fallen out of love. That's where it comes from. Really what it is, there was a moment in time where in that relationship you felt something for each other emotionally, but because of life change, because of bad decisions, because of boredom, because of a lot of things, you no longer feel the same way. And that's really what's meant by we fell out of love. It means that we no longer feel love the same way.
Yeah. And I mean, it always is we're emotional people. And so there is always going to be some emotion behind,
Right.
The way that you feel towards someone and even that love, there is going to be some emotion behind that,
Yeah.
but it's not all emotion.
So the question is then, how do we accurately define love? And that's a really, to say it's important is not enough. It is critical in order to have the right relationships. How do we define love? So if love is not emotional, if love is not about me, then what is it? Years ago, a doctor and family therapist made the statement, and it's one that kind of caught on, that love is a decision. Love is a decision. I believe that was Gary Smalley. He said, love is a decision, and he taught a whole series of lessons about love being a decision, and a lot of things have spun off of that. But truly, love is a decision. And again, this is a critical point to make. If love is not emotional, if it's not about how I feel, then what is it? Well, it's about a decision that you make. Now, we can't always control how we feel, but we can control what we decide to do. The one thing no one can take away from us is our ability to decide, as stated by Viktor Frankl so many years ago, right? The one thing people cannot take away from us is our ability to decide, which makes love something that is extremely secure. Even though it feels very fragile and very vulnerable and very insecure, it's not when we understand that it's a decision that is made. We decide to love. So then the next thing we have to talk about is, well, what is the decision? What is the decision? So, although it's typically defined, love, as an emotion, as something we feel, we understand it's not an emotion, but there is emotion that goes along with that, hopefully. If you love someone and there's no emotion, that can be a very difficult relationship to be a part of, and a lot of people are. I love them, they don't love me back, and there is not the feeling of, that warm feeling of love that goes along with that. But when it's all working, the decision to love leads to an emotional feeling or response of love, and it all works together. But the decision is what? The decision is this: it's to do what is best for the object of our love. To do what is best for the object of our love. That's what love is. It's a decision that is made to do what is best for the person that we say we love. And that's very, very different than defining love as if it is some kind of an emotional response to the people around us.
Yeah. Because when we emotionally respond to that, instead of just deciding that no matter what they do to me, no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, I'm going to love them, and we allow that to be a decision, then it's every relationship that you find yourself in, whether that's a marriage, whether that's friends, whether that's parents, siblings, children, it doesn't matter. When you decide that this person, I love them, and because of that, I'm making this decision to do whatever is best for them, not what's best for me, then, you've heard unmet expectations. A lot of people, they say that, this person maybe I love them, but they don't love me because they haven't met these expectations for me. So because they have not met these expectations that I have of them, that must mean they don't love me. That's not necessarily the case. Just because maybe they seem to not reciprocate, those feelings, or because it doesn't mean that, I just think that's really, really important, is to not have it be emotion based, and it's really across the board, every relationship.
And if we're waiting on someone to reciprocate those expectations that we have, in order for us to decide whether or not we're going to love them, then it's not really love.
Right.
Love is just by its very nature, just fundamentally is something that doesn't require anything in return. It is unconditional. I mean, it truly is unconditional. And again, the question is always, how can it be unconditional? There should be reciprocation. There should be the meeting of expectations. Well, that's what's hoped for. You desire that when people, when you're in that relationship where you love someone and you hope that they love you back. But it's not necessary for love to take place. And again, it's almost a revolutionary concept, and it's something that's sometimes hard to get your mind around.
Yeah.
But it's deciding to do what's best for them,
Right.
regardless of whether or not they do what's best for me.
I think the easiest way to understand this is if you're a parent, the way that we love our kids, the way that we treat our kids, especially if you have a baby and that child cannot reciprocate everything that you're giving to them.
They're selfish.
They cannot
Selfish,
give back
these
to you
babies.
there. But by nature, yes. And they cannot give back to you the same as what you're giving to them. And so to me, it's really interesting that it's so easy for us to understand in that concept, in that relationship. It's so easy to give and give and give without expecting in return, and without, they're not going to be able to in the same way give back to us, but we love them regardless.
Right.
And it's really easy for us to do that in that relationship. And other relationships, it's like completely, it's completely different, because when you have that child that is completely helpless and fully dependent on you, what else can you do but just love them and take care of them and help them? Because what you're doing is you're doing what's best for them in every way. Yeah. And that's why in that particular relationship, I think it's so interesting that it's so easy to do, because we have the best interest of that person in mind. And to me, I feel like that's a really, really good example that we can look at, as people, and maybe a relationship that we've had in our lives of when that's so easy to do when they're little like that.
Yeah, it gets a lot more difficult when you do expect something in return.
Yes. When it's like adult relationships and that, yeah.
And particularly in marriage relationships and those things.
Yeah.
So marriage is a decision to do what is best for the other person. Love. Yeah, marriage too.
Well, yes.
Yeah, marriage too. But yes, love.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Love.
You're just thinking about marriage, right?
I'm just thinking about marriage.
Yeah.
I just love marriage so much that I get the two phrases confused.
Because of me.
Because of you. Love is the decision that you make to do what is best for the object of your love, for that other person. Okay, so we settled that. Now what that means practically is there is no expectation of return. It is completely unconditional. Now, we're human beings. We have an expectation, whether we want to or not, that if we do what's best for someone else, they're going to respond. They're going to love us in return. But even thinking about children, that phrase, what is best for the object of our love, becomes very, very important. We're not doing necessarily what they want us to do or what makes them feel good. We're doing what is best for them. Again, easy to understand in the context of children. We make them take baths. We make them brush their teeth. We make them go to school. And the whole world is homeschooling right now, so we all know what that's like, right? We make them do those things because we love them. If we didn't love them, we would let them do whatever they want to do. It's so clearly illustrated with kids. We do the hard thing. We do what's best for them, even though it's inconvenient for us, because it is best for them. And in our other relationships, it's the exact same way. We do what is best. I've talked to many families who have older children, and their kids are doing things that are completely out of control. These children are now young adults, and the parents don't want to let go of them, don't want to help them to move on, don't want to step back and just let them make their decisions, because they'll say something like this: I love them too much to let them do that. I love them too much to take my hands off of them. Really, it's fear and it's insecurity that prevents you from doing that. Love would be saying, I love you, and I'm going to do what's best for you, and what's best for you right now is to let you live out these decisions that you're making. They may hurt you, they may have some negative consequences, but love is me doing the hard thing that ultimately will be the better thing for you. And this is a difficult thing for us to understand and sometimes play out, but it is making a decision to do what is best for the object of our love.
Yeah. It's I don't really have anything else to add to that.
I just did such a good job on that.
Such a good job. But yeah, no, it's really difficult like what you were saying, when your kids get older and they start making decisions, and sometimes it's insecurity and the other things that you mentioned, but it could be just be selfishness too, because you don't want them to make you look bad.
Right.
You know, want what's best for you instead of what's best for them, and what you want is for them either to stay home all the time
Yeah.
and never leave you or never move away or never, when in fact what's best for them is to pursue whatever, you know, they're needing to do for them in their life. And even if they're making right decisions, sometimes that's difficult because sometimes what's best for them is to be excited for them and to be helping them to pursue what it is that they feel like they're being called to pursue. And so sometimes that's the best for them, and that would be, you know, in a positive way. You know, they're making good decisions in their lives, and sometimes out of selfishness we want to discourage them from doing that, or let's think about this some more, maybe you should look at this other thing, because we want so badly to hold on to them and to not let go. But out of love we need to encourage them to pursue that, encourage them to move forward. So that would be kind of the other side, I guess, to you know, them making positive decisions, but us encouraging them in that way because that's what's best for them, and showing love to them in that way as they're getting older.
For not having anything to say, you had a lot to say.
Oh, sorry.
You had a lot to say.
Yeah.
And you know, along with that, again, is a proper definition. So in the beginning, we said, if you don't properly define love, you don't know how to love. But if you don't properly define love, you may not feel loved. Mm-hmm. When you discipline your children, when you do what's best for them, even when they may not want that to be done, you'll hear something like this with little kids, and hopefully not with your older kids so much, but with little kids, you don't love me, or you wouldn't do that. When the reality is, it's the complete opposite. It's true. We love you so much that we're willing to do that. But even in our own, you know, a marriage relationship or those close relationships, we can feel the same way. Well, they did that because they don't love me. When often the reason people do the things that they do in the context of your relationships is because they do love you. Now, hopefully it's not hurtful or harmful. It's not with malice, and that's not what we're talking about. But it's doing something that is uncomfortable, saying things that necessarily that aren't necessarily those, you know, those happy conversations you want to have, but they're needed conversations. Yeah. And you do the uncomfortable things and the difficult things because you love someone. But if that someone doesn't define love correctly, they don't always receive it that way.
Yeah. I really, we've talked before about the organization that we work with, and Mighty Oaks, and working a lot with military families, and Jeremy having been in the Marine Corps, and us having experienced some of these things ourselves, but then now also talking to a lot of other military spouses and wives, and it seems pretty common for women or wives whose husbands are, you know, the military or law enforcement, to maybe feel like their husband is keeping something from them if they don't share everything with them that maybe they've experienced, or, you know, something that they've, maybe a traumatic experience that they've had in their lives, or something that they've been through. And when really out of love, and if you're defining this word love correctly, seeing or doing things because of what's best for the other person that you say that you love, sometimes it might be in your best interest as his wife for you maybe not to know some of maybe these experiences that he has had, and for you not to know, you know, maybe those kinds of things that he has been through, because he loves you so much that he does not want you. He's looking out what's best for you. And it doesn't mean he's keeping anything from you. It doesn't mean he's looking out to hurt your marriage or hurt your relationship, but maybe that's what's best for you, is to not, you maybe kind of know everything as it comes to situations like that. And so that's kind of, I think, what I think of when you were saying, when you were talking about that, as far as like a marriage relationship, or maybe sometimes dealing with hard things. It seems like that's come up quite a bit recently, that and it's nothing bad. It's not like
it's not like you're hiding something or anything like that,
or maybe not,
or lying.
Yes
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about maybe something that they've been through, something they experienced at work, or something that was very traumatic to them, maybe them not wanting to share all the details with you. And I think that should be okay.
Yeah. And if, you know, if that's the case, then they need to get help somewhere, and someone they can talk to.
Yep.
Maybe a professional that they can talk to, but not bringing that home and dumping it on your lap because they know it will hurt you too. So love, it's not a feeling. It's a decision that you make to do what is best for the object of your love. So you're doing what is best for them. It's completely unconditional in that you're not expecting anything in return. You hope for it, and the feeling should come. And, you know, that's when we talk about romance. Romance and love are not the same thing. Romance is, you know, kind of the emotional aspect of that in a marriage relationship or in a dating relationship, and, you know, those relationships. the warm feelings that come from being a parent. That's different than love. Love is the foundation for those things, hopefully. And if that is the foundation, if love is, then those things will last even if they come and go. But the one part of love that is present in the definition, but absent from our thinking, is self. It's doing what is best for the object of your love, whether it's your children or a spouse or someone else that you say you love, someone that you care about. And these can be in all kinds of relationships, of course. If it's love, then what is lacking is self. It's not about me. And as Susanna mentioned earlier, it's not disciplining my kids or controlling my children out in public so they don't embarrass me. Mm-hmm. It's helping them to learn how to behave so that when they become adults, they know how to behave. It's teaching them and training them and helping them to learn to do the right thing because it's best for them, not because it's best for me. It's equipping your children to go out into the world and do what they're gifted to do, whether that's what I would have chosen for them or not. Mm-hmm. It's doing what's best for them. It's encouraging your spouse and helping them, even aligning to their own gifts and skills, even if it's something you're not interested in, because it's best for them. It has nothing to do with you. It completely removes you from the equation, and that is extremely, extremely difficult to do. The Bible says that in perfect love, or where there is perfect love, there is no fear. Perfect love casts out fear. Why is that? Because my decision to love you is not based on your behavior, whether you're having a good day or a bad day, whether you treat me the way that I think you should or not. It's a decision that I've made to do what's best for you, regardless of the impact on me. And we don't like to hear that. Yeah. That is completely the opposite of every movie, of every story, of every idea we have of love. It's that love is all about me. This love has nothing to do with you.
And I think it's really important to point out too that this is talking about like in a healthy, speaking of marriage, in a healthy marriage relationship. Sure. Where there's no abuse taking place, where there's not, a reason that maybe you're seeking counsel because of something traumatic that's happening in your relationship right now. We're talking about like a healthy marriage relationship to where you are truly looking out, each of you at the same time are, doing what's best for the other person. And so that's really kind of what we're talking about here is completely regardless of, whether they're having a bad day or not, or whatever, in a healthy marriage relationship where you're looking out for the best interest of the other person, regardless of how that. Right. And I like the example you gave with, encouraging the other person to do things according to their strengths because you want what's best for them, even though it might not be something that interests you. Right. And I think a lot of times, we try to find things. It's nice to have things in common. Sure. It's nice to have things that you like to do together and all that. But sometimes it's okay to encourage your spouse to go pursue this thing, a sport or a hobby or something that
even a career of some kind.
Something that is really, really good for them. Because it's going to be good for your relationship if you are encouraging, each at the same time encouraging the other person to do what's best for them and to pursue those kinds of things. Yeah.
It's very simple, I think, the concept, the definition of it, but having been married for a while and having children and other relationships outside of our home, as simple as it is to understand, it's extremely difficult to live out. Years ago, I used the phrase as kind of a test for love. I taught this, that a real test of your love is how willing you are to be inconvenienced for the person you say you love. How willing are you to be inconvenienced for them? Mm. Because if love is not about you, then you should be willing to be inconvenienced for them, right? We always say, I'd die for you. I'd do this for you. I'd do that for you. Getting up and getting a glass of water for you, now that's a real challenge, right? Yes. But if it's all about you, and not about me, then I would be willing to be inconvenienced far more than just, a glass of water, whatever those things that we deal with. Yeah. But that really is the test or the reflection. But the greatest illustration of this, and this is why the Bible uses it for an illustration, is the relationship of Christ to the church, to his people, to us, and to those who put faith in him. And that's why in the passage really in the Bible that speaks on marriage the most, Ephesians chapter 5, it tells husbands that they should love their wives, that word love, their wives, and it gives the reason or the picture as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. So husband, you're to love your wife And it should look like the love that Jesus has for us. So we should then say, well, what does that love look like? You could go to Philippians chapter 2 in the Bible and read about that, where the Bible tells the church that they should care for each other more than they care for themselves. They shouldn't look on their own things, but look on other people's things and the things of those around them. They should have the mind of Jesus. And then it goes on to explain that. And it says of Jesus that he is God. He knew he was God. But even as God, he humbled himself and became obedient to death, even the death of the cross. That's what this weekend, this Easter weekend, is about. It's about remembering what Jesus did on the cross, and then the fact that he rose again because he's God. But the sacrificial death of Jesus on the cross is the greatest illustration of sacrificial love that the world has ever known. Jesus is God, and him being God means that he didn't need to die for his own sin. He didn't need to do that. He did that because we needed him to. So Jesus died. God left heaven. He came to earth. He lived a perfect and sinless life so that he could die on the cross for us. Not because he needed to for himself, but because we needed him to so that we could have our sins forgiven. So when the admonition is given to husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church, the real instruction there is you need to love the people in your life with the type of love that reflects what Jesus did. It was wholly and completely sacrificial. It was doing what was best, even though it was hard for the people that needed it most. And this is great, when they didn't want it. Mm-hmm. They didn't want it. But he did it for them because they needed it. That is love. It's making a decision to do what is best, what is needed, what is necessary for the object of your love.
Kind of makes me think of that other verse, and we've kind of talked about it before as it's probably the greatest relationship verse in the Bible, and I think this illustrates this too. Not that we think that wives are exempt from loving this way, but I think this verse, Ephesians 4:32, and be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God through Christ Jesus forgave us. And I think that is kind of all encompassing in all relationships, because that's a command given to all of us, is be kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another because of how God through Christ forgave us. Right. And so I think that's just a really good example to us to look to in all of our relationships and how we should love other people, and for us to be kind and tenderhearted and forgiving and looking to other people the way that Christ looked at us, and the way that God, the reason that he gave his son, so that we could have that restored relationship with him, and really just looking at all of our relationships that way.
In life, what we need to operate are two things, basically. We need a clear definition, and we need to understand what the standard is. Mm. We need clear definition so we know what we're doing, and we need to know the standard so that we know what it is we're trying to measure up to. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to this idea of love, we have so many ideas, so many misperceptions, so many bad illustrations, so much conventional wisdom around this idea of love. It has our whole society twisted upside down. Yeah. Marriages break up because of the lack of definition and clarity on this. Children angry with parents, angry parents with children, and it's created a mess. But what the Bible gives us is a clear definition and a standard to live up to. And that clear definition is, it is a completely sacrificial act, a decision to do what's best for the person that you say you love. And that's why there is no fear. That's why there's safety. That's why there's security. Because my decision to love you isn't based on your behavior. And again, you said this, in the right kind of relationship, abuse and those things, that's a different conversation entirely. But in normal relationships with ups and downs and good days and bad days, the definition is, I will do what's best for you because I've decided to. That's love. And the standard, how far should I go, is Jesus. He is God, and yet sacrificially, out of a heart of love, for God so loved the world, that's John 3:16, that's why he did it. He did what was best for the objects of his love, and that's us. Mm-hmm. Seems so simple. Yeah. Just so hard to live out.
Complicated.
So hard to live out.
And it's such a big topic. Like you said, there's so many things written about it and said about it. And I feel like that kind of muddles all of it and just makes it more complicated than it actually needs to be. It really is a really simple concept. And that's why at the beginning of talking about this, I mentioned how easy it is for us to look at that in relationship to like a baby, and how easy it is to do in that relationship, and
Yeah.
how complicated it gets as they get older, or, as we deal with kind of our other adult relationships. But it really is as simple as that. And I feel like we complicate it way more than it needs to be.
Yeah, like so many other things in life.
Right.
We complicate them.
Yeah.
So this week, as difficult as things are, change your thinking and change your perspective on what it is to love. Look at the people in your life not as those who can do something for you or should. Don't hold them to an unrealistic standard, but find ways that you can serve them, because really that's the heart of real love. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching again. Yeah.
If you have not yet, please do subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Again, that lets you know when more content comes online. And, there's nothing for us to gain in this. We're not asking you to do that because we get something out of it. We do this because we want to communicate things that we've learned and things that we're learning and things that we're trying to figure out, communicate those with you, and perhaps give you a different perspective on so many of the issues that you're going through in your lives. So thank you. Appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you next time.